Welcome to This Explainer, where we're diving into a bitter, lifelong sibling rivalry that inadvertently birthed two of the most iconic sports empires on the planet. Honestly, chances are you've got a pair of their shoes sitting in your closet right now. Today, we're unpacking a crazy history completely filled with betrayal, sabotage, and a corporate war that quite literally spans two world wars. Think about Adidas and Puma. They are absolute titans of the modern sports industry, right? You see their gear everywhere. But here's the wild part. How exactly did these two massive, totally distinct global brands originate from a single blood-feuding family in a tiny German village? It's just an unbelievable story of ambition, intense paranoia, and a town that was split right down the middle. Part 1. The Dassler brothers unite. To really understand this explosive corporate divorce, we've got to go back to the beginning and see how these brothers teamed up in the desperate, ruined economy of post-World War I Germany. So let's wind the clock back. Adolf, who went by Adi, and Rudolf, known as Rudi Dassler, returned home from World War I to a completely devastated German economy. Their mother's laundry business had pretty much lost all its customers. But Adi, he had this incredible vision for specialized spiked shoes for athletes. Lacking any real capital, the guy got incredibly resourceful. He was literally out there scavenging old battlefields, using strips of leather from discarded military helmets and string from broken parachutes to cobble his shoes together. The town didn't even have reliable electricity, so he rigged up a bicycle to a leather trimmer and had a friend pedal it just to generate power. Talk about hustle, right? By 1924, that pure grit laid the foundation for the Dassler brothers' sports shoe factory. What made them so successful early on was that they were total opposites, and they perfectly complemented each other. Adi was the introverted perfectionist, just completely obsessed with the manufacturing details and the biomechanics of how athletes move. Rudi, on the flip side, was this loud, extroverted, highly charismatic salesman. He was out there aggressively pitching their gear to every single sports club in Germany. Adi would build an amazing product, and Rudi would sell it out. They were, for a time, an absolutely unstoppable team. Part 2. World War II divisions. Business was booming, and they finally moved out of that little laundry shed, but global politics and the outbreak of war were about to plunge the brothers into some deep, dark paranoia. We have to talk about how they navigated the 1930s. The Nazi regime was heavily pushing physical fitness, and both brothers opportunistically joined the party, which obviously skyrocketed demand for their athletic shoes. But then the 1936 Olympics hit Berlin. Adi pulled off an incredibly risky move that flew right in the face of Hitler's propaganda. He tracked down African-American athlete Jesse Owens and secretly gifted him custom shoes. Owens ended up winning 4 gold medals in Dassler shoes. It was an unprecedented global PR victory, but when World War II officially kicked off, their factory was seized and repurposed to make military boots and weapons. With Adi left to run the factory and Rudi feeling entirely sidelined, a massive internal power struggle really started to boil over. And it all came to a head with one terribly misunderstood sentence. During an Allied bombing raid, Adi and his wife rushed down into a bomb shelter, where Rudi and his wife are already hiding. Adi yells, "The bastards are back again." Now, he was talking about the Allied bomber planes right above them, but a deeply paranoid Rudi was 100% convinced that Adi was referring to him and his wife. By the time they walked out of that basement, their relationship was completely shattered. After the war, this mutual suspicion escalated into absolute betrayal during the denazification trials. Rudi gets arrested by the Americans and spends a year in a prisoner of war camp. Well, he finds out the arrest was triggered by an anonymous tip-off, and he is firmly convinced that Adi sold him out to steal control of the company. Later, when Adi was put on trial for war profiteering, Rudi literally jumped at the chance to testify against his own brother. Even though they were both eventually cleared, there was no going back. They were sworn enemies. Part 3. A bitter family split. By 1948, being in the same room was impossible, setting off a horribly messy corporate divorce that would change sports history forever. They spitefully divided absolutely everything: the factory assets, the staff, the sales team, down to the last shoelace. Adi took the technical staff, Rudi took the salespeople, and they set up rival shops on opposite sides of the local river. And just look at how deeply personal the naming was. Adi takes his first and last name to create Adidas. Rudi tries to do the exact same thing, calling his new company Ruda, before realizing a few weeks later that Puma sounded a lot more athletic. Now, this is where it gets totally absurd. Their feud literally divided their tiny hometown of Herzogenaurach into semi-isolated cults. People started calling it the town of bent necks because literally everyone would look down at your shoes before deciding whether or not to even say hello to you. I mean, there were separate schools for Adidas and Puma kids. It was a massive social taboo to date across brand lines, and rival gangs even popped up based on what sneakers you wore. It got so bad that the local mayor would wear one Adidas shoe and one Puma shoe to official events, just to avoid infuriating either side. That is next-level petty. Part 4. The Global Shoe War. With their hometown totally fractured, the brothers decided to take their blood feud to the global stage, kicking things off at the 1954 World Cup. Rudi had actually tried to supply the West German national team first, but he couldn't agree on the money. So Adi naturally swoops right in and steals the deal. And this leads to the famous miracle of Bern. Adi gives the team this absolute genius invention, adjustable cleats with screw-in studs. When a massive rainstorm turned the World Cup final into a mud pit, the opposing Hungarian players were slipping all over the place. The German players? They just screwed in longer studs for better grip, pulled off a miraculous win, and practically overnight, Adidas became a symbol of German national pride. Rudi was devastated and hungry for revenge. Fast forward a bit, and the rivalry gets passed down to their sons, Horst at Adidas and Armin at Puma, and it leads to this incredible heist-like marketing stunt. The cousins had made a secret truce called the Pelé Pact, basically promising neither would sponsor the global soccer icon Pelé just to avoid bankrupting each other in a bidding war. Well, Puma broke the pact. They secretly slipped Pelé $125,000. Then, right before the opening whistle of the 1970 World Cup quarterfinal, with millions of global television cameras zoomed in tight on him, Pelé asked the referee to stop the game. He kneels down and very slowly, very deliberately ties his Puma shoes. Absolute marketing gold, but it completely vaporized whatever tiny bit of trust was left between the families. Tragically, the brothers just stubbornly refused to speak for the rest of their lives. Even when Rudi was on his deathbed battling lung cancer, Adi flat out refused to visit him or go to the funeral. They stayed completely divided even in death, making sure they were buried at the absolute opposite ends of the town's graveyard. Just a quiet, incredibly somber end to a literal lifetime of hostility. Part 5. Decline and Modern Rebirth. Blinded by their absolute obsession with destroying each other, both brands completely took their eye off the ball. By the 1980s, a scrappy new upstart named Nike stole the crown, and Adidas and Puma nearly went totally bankrupt. Both companies actually had to be sold off to outside investors, who managed to brilliantly revive them using two wildly different playbooks. Adidas went all in on hardcore athletic dominance. They partnered up with serious superstars like Kobe Bryant and David Beckham, dropped the iconic Predator boots, and eventually launched the Yeezy line. Puma, on the other hand, realized they couldn't win a direct fight, so they pivoted. They chased niche sports like Formula One, sponsored Usain Bolt, and transformed into an edgy, rebellious fashion brand, collaborating with high-end designers and bringing on Rihanna as creative director. Adidas's massive comeback was really locked in by this absolutely staggering number, $3.8 billion. That's exactly how much Adidas paid to acquire Reebok back in 2006. This strategic mega deal finally gave them the global footprint and the sheer financial muscle they desperately needed to stand in the ring and trade punches with Nike. Believe it or not, the two companies actually played a friendly mixed-team soccer match in 2009 to formally bury the hatchet once and for all. Though, funny enough, their headquarters still sit on opposite sides of that exact same river today. But going through this unbelievable history of petty sabotage and brilliance innovation leaves us with one massive lingering what if. If Adi and Rudi Dassler hadn't let their paranoia tear them apart and instead combined their genius into one single unified mega brand, would Nike even exist today? It's definitely something to chew on next time you lace up your sneakers. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.